Hello, I'm Nicholas Neveling from Real Deals, and welcome to the AI-powered GP series. In this series, we look at how GPs are using artificial intelligence to transform their businesses in a competitive market. And in today's episode, we explore how AI is helping GPs to handle scale and complexity in a competitive industry, whether that is to gain an edge in deal processes, manage fundraising better, or report more transparently to their investors. So to discuss these themes with me, it's a great pleasure to be joined by Olivier Mangez, who is VP for Alternative Investments at SS&C Intralinks, and Dominic Dalli, who is the Managing Partner for Sovereign Capital. Dominic, maybe if I could come to you first. As a manager, I imagine 10, 15 years ago, you could have run your operations quite simply. You wouldn't have had too many funds, not too many products, relatively small LP bases, not these huge portfolios. That obviously has changed as the industry has grown. What has that meant in terms of how you think about running your business? And are you able to rely on the same rails that you were using 10, 15 years ago? Or does there come a point where that becomes too complex, too risky, and you do need to make a step change with respect to how you think about your operating model?
Yeah, so our firm was founded 25 years ago. In fact, this year we're celebrating our 25-year anniversary. And I think like a lot of PE managers, we very much started as a founder-run firm with a single strategy. I think the biggest change for me, Nick, has been the fact that we've had to institutionalize a load of our processes. We've had to, if you like, release the business from the original founder's influence. And that has indeed required a significant level of investment in infrastructure. I think the kind of people that we are employing within our firm these days are very different and have a range of skills different from the founders of our firm 25 years ago. And of course, introducing a range of tools to be able to manage multiple funds safely, to communicate with our LPs effectively, and to develop our network, develop our business and our strategy accordingly has been absolutely fundamental, particularly in the last 7 or 8 years, I would say.
Okay, interesting. Olivier, you'll have a good view on the markets. And what do you see with respect to, I suppose, the warning signs when a firm has scaled to the point where its old operational model isn't working, isn't able to sustain the business, and that starts introducing risk, and the growth of the business is now outstripping the operational model that the business actually needs to function efficiently?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Nick. I think that those signs, obviously, when the deal flow is slow, you don't really see them. This is when the number of deals is starting to increase. When you're launching your fundraising process, this is where you start seeing those signals. I see 2 different signals that seems to be key for me. The first one is the human bottleneck. That is when in your organization, everything relies on some senior member of the teams who have the memory of the company, who have the memory of the deal flow, etc. And sometimes the process slows down because they are not available. This is something critical, and you really need to consider it. The other aspect is the fundraising process is a stress test for the organization, right? That is, will you be able to respond quickly, efficiently to the LP requests? And this is where information management is really key, to be able to share knowledge across the team member, even the new joiners. And I think that something that changed drastically in the market over the last few years, that is the emergence of generative AI that actually help manage this flow of information that can be sometimes overwhelming.
Okay, yeah, really interesting. Dominic, maybe just to come back on some of those points. If we assume that a manager is now having to manage multiple different fund structures, it's not just your closed-end structure. I imagine there's special managed accounts. There perhaps some continuation vehicles that are now on the platform. There may be some feeder funds, etc., etc., etc. There's a lot more complexity in those fund structures. In order to keep track of all these different entities that you're now responsible for, what are your options? I imagine the one would be you keep the same manual processes, but you have to scale your teams. or you go to technology, and that's the way you scale. Am I right there? Are those the two options? And I imagine that the latter one would be the one that works better.
Yeah. Look, I think like a lot of firms, we went through that step change of investment in technology many years ago. I think it's a bit of a hygiene factor, frankly. As always, it's always best to invest ahead of the curve, isn't it? And make sure that you've built the infrastructure before you then go and launch a bunch of new products. And then it's about, I think, scaling that technology. So yes, adding people to a degree, and we've done that. We've got a very, very meaningful and significant finance, operations, and compliance team, and they're absolutely embedded in our business. They're really, really critical to what we do. But supporting those people with what is now a multiple range of service providers and products that exist out there. So that might be around NDA management, it might be around cap table management, it might be around portfolio monitoring, for example. But I'm always surprised by how many of these product providers exist out there and how, frankly, innovative they are in offering solutions to problems that, frankly, we never really knew existed.
One of the things I wanted to ask is how technology evolves how the GP thinks about teams and how it perhaps frees up teams to do different things. And if we look at, let's say, a deal process in particular, and we look at what AI can do in the deal process, especially with respect to some of the heavy lifting around document reviews, reviewing due diligence materials, et cetera. Olivier, what sort of capability is there out there to automate a lot of that work in a live deal process? And then secondly, how do you balance that sort of automation convenience with still allowing space for a deal maker to be able to ask the questions they need to ask, review the materials that they need to review in order to come to judgments, form a view on valuation, etc.?
Yeah, very good question. I think what is critical here is automation is great. It should not replace judgment, right? We need to have a human in the loop. So really the technology is just an enabler. We want to keep our people and they make critical decisions. From a technology perspective, we have technology available today that is really incredible. When it comes to deal making, there are some consideration to consider. Especially what are the decision maker, eventually they want to get insights, right? So do you feed the technology with the right information for it to be able to give you this insight is absolutely key. And it's very easy to say that I'm connected with ChatGPT or I'm connected with Claude. It doesn't mean that you feed the AI with the right information. And the second thing is, Claude, ChatGPT, they are very good at compressing information. They will take information from a lot of different sources, merge it into a summary. Amazing. The thing is, if you merge a lot of information that some of the users should not have access to, once it's bundled, it's very difficult to extract the confidential information. And so from a technology perspective, what is absolutely key is to deploy a technology that is able to hide information for the users who are not supposed to have access to it, especially when you're exposing data to a buyer. You don't want to expose all the information. So I think this is critical aspect in terms of technology. Do you feed the right information to the AI, and do you control what is made available?
Okay, so we're talking a grounded AI solution where certain documents are made available, and then users, whoever they may be, bidders, can query those documents to extract the information they need. Okay. Dominic, have you used AI at all in your due diligence process? And I'd also be interested to get an idea of, as you've perhaps experimented and used it, maybe what works well and maybe where you experience limitations.
Yeah. So look, I think we, along with a bunch of other low mid-market, mid-market and bulge bracket investors, absolutely will use a level of automation for company monitoring, investment reports, for internal investment committee submissions. And I'd say the quality of those reports has improved, particularly over the last couple of years. You can find that with relatively little human input, actually the quality of output can be really quite good. The game changer for us around the deal process has been around deal origination and what automation can do in deal origination. We track 16,000 companies as being within the sectors that we invest in, as being of the right scale and founder-owned for us to be, for them to be investable for us. And many years ago, we would have tracked many fewer companies, and we would have been very reliant upon the knowledge of our deal originators as to how those companies were progressing and their performance. Now, as you'd expect, we have a very sophisticated CRM system that updates itself quarterly and is updated by our deal originators quarterly on company news flow, on financial performance of those companies. And therein, I think, for us lies the answer to your question, Nick. It tends to be down to, well, what type of due diligence are we looking to do? Are we looking to track those businesses that are punching out beyond their peers in the niches that we're most interested in, informally, if you like, before we then engage in formal financial due diligence? For that aspect of the process, I think automation is super powerful, and we've found it of increasing use over the last few years for sure.
Last question on this point. With automation, AI tools, looking at a deal team, what skills sort of disappear or become less relevant, and what becomes more valuable?
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious one for us is financial modelling. Okay. There's no doubt that automation can play a very important and frankly reliable role in developing pretty sophisticated financial models. So clearly it's important that our deal teams understand how these models work, but they're absolutely able to generate these models through the support of automation these days so much quicker than they used to. The bit they can't replace, the bit that automation can't replace, is persuading the founder owner to engage in a first-time private equity deal for the first time in his or her lifetime. And therein perhaps lies the answer to the importance of the human in this whole deal-making process. So absolutely it's useful.
Olivier, any perspectives from your side on that point? What skills get elevated? What maybe is less relevant?
I think you made a good point. I mean, we need to adapt. I think that in every organization, it's a new technology. Everybody needs to learn. There is no user manual about it. You need to learn what it is capable of. You need to, confront what are your assumptions and what are the reality. I think the most important aspect is curiosity. You need to embrace technology. You try it, and you see what it is capable of. You realize what it is not capable of. Very important. And you experiment. Yeah.
Wanted to move on to, maintaining system standards across your organization, especially if you're using technology more often. And again, back to that complexity point, if you're having to monitor lots of different legal entities, a lot more deals, bigger portfolios, etc. Dom, what are some of the operational costs of, maybe sticking to the old school model where you're running multiple deal processes and everybody's sort of sharing local folders, shared files, etc. Does that introduce friction points? Is that a big bottleneck? Can clearing that bottleneck help you to be a bit more on the front foot, a bit sharper in your execution?
Yeah, I think one of the beauties of technology is that it's pretty cost effective, right? So if I were to compare two major macro dynamics over the last 20 years, be it, say, the adoption of technology versus the increase in regulation, I'd say the increase in regulation in running a multi-product, much more complex private equity manager, the costs there are multiple times more expensive than the introduction of technology. So from our experience, actually, Nick, the introduction of technology has been a real enabler. It's brought a load of efficiencies. We've supplemented that, as I said earlier, by increasing our compliance, operational and back office teams for sure. But I don't think it's been cost prohibitive for us. In fact, I think it's been very cost effective.
Olivier, just on that point, can a consolidated tech environment help you to address things like maintaining standards, controlling permissions on who can see what, making sure that there's an auditable trail for documentation? I imagine that if you've got lots of different systems that people are using, things can fall between the cracks. There's a lot of manual processes to reconciling everything. etc. Make the case for pulling everything together into one system or one platform.
Of course. Look, standardization only matters if it survives pressure, right? Pressure of the deals. Okay, you have a deal coming on the table, you have time constraints, you have resource constraints, you have a fundraising being launched, same thing, you have inbound queries from LPs. And this is where you test if your standard actually matters or not. If for every deal that you're making, every add-on, every bid, etc., you're pressing the reset button, I mean, what's the point? You're not really learning. So introducing a learning practice where you learn from every deal that you're making and you're consolidating the practice and you try to automate it, and you introduce this feedback loop where you improve really matters. When you consolidate your tech stack, you can create your checklist of what are all the questions that I know will come from the investment committee. What are all the questions or all the topics that LP may question me about during the fundraising process. And when you have the right tech, the right information management system, then you can standardize practices and processes to make sure that the information is ready the day you need it. And I think this is what matters when you invest into technology, to make sure that you can repeat processes and improve processes over time.
Dominic, as the industry gets bigger and operations become more complex, how are you keeping oversight and visibility of everything that's going on in your business?
Yeah, look, I think we have the benefit of being a single office, single country, single strategy manager. So actually being present is really important. Our teams are co-located here in 25 Victoria Street. And by daily interaction with my teams, I can get a good sense, a good handle on what's going on, where certain functions are struggling, where indeed there's a bit of innovation that we can learn from within the organisation. So for an organisation such as ours, I think that keeping oversight is relatively straightforward. I think more challenging for us is the ability to consistently innovate, but within our fairway. So, reminding ourselves why we have the right to exist, reminding ourselves why we've been able to generate alpha for our LPs for so long. And whilst they want us to be innovative, whilst they want us to come up with different products that satisfy their needs, we've got to remember what we're good at, and really what our right to exist really is. So.
Yeah, really good point. Olivier, what about the bigger organization that does maybe have multiple strategies on its platform or is operating across more than one geography? How can technology, AI, assist with oversight and maintain control of a growing, sprawling operation?
I think that one of the big risks in organization is not to have a gap and to know that you have a gap, it's to completely miss the fact that you have a gap in the knowledge, because you are so overwhelmed with information that you don't really see it. And this is where I feel technology can help us. I was mentioning it earlier. I mean, AI, the real true benefit of it is the ability to compress information, to make it easy to ingest for a human being, and to help spot inconsistency, to help spot gaps in the when we are evaluating a deal, when we are working on a fundraising process, etc. So this is really the aspect to see the big picture. And now we have tools. 5 years ago, we had no tools to do it. It was really relying on your brain, right?
Dominic, we've spoken a lot about technology as a tool for scaling. If we put technology aside, what are some of the other challenges that come with scaling a private equity firm?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately we exist because we generate outsized returns. So as private equity firms scale, I think it's really important they don't lose sight that maintaining and improving returns is their reason for existing. Yeah, second aspect is culture as well. As our firm, as these firms institutionalize, as they bring in a different range of skills, as they invest in technology, the culture of those firms can really change. And again, we mustn't lose sight of the fact that we want to be ambitious, we want to incentivize, we want to retain, we want to motivate our people. So I see that cultural development as being equally important.
Last question to close, and maybe Dominic, if I could throw this to you first of all. I suppose if we go back to private equity's origins, the back office was very much there to produce backward reporting to the LP. You could produce it quarterly because LPs were happy with that. That's obviously changed. Is it fair to say that now there's almost a closing gap between back office and front office, and that the back office is almost an enabler of front office success? And if you see a firm that's tight with its back office, you can, in some respects, predict a firm that's probably going to do well when it comes to identifying companies, investing, realizing value on exit.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? So the phrases back office, middle office, front office, for me, always sound like investment banking phrases rather than private equity. But I think that's true for a reason. I think a lot of PE firms have been very good at making sure that all of their colleagues and everything they do are absolutely integrated to their deal process. And fundamentally, we are here to serve our LPs. So ultimately, if our LPs are looking for us to diversify strategy, are looking to invest in, let's say, co-investment opportunities with us, in, you mentioned earlier, continuation vehicle opportunities with us, we have to listen to that. We have to think about, well, okay, where within our deal process can we offer our LPs what they're looking for? And I think private equity has been fantastically innovative in being able to design a range of products for its LPs, making sure that actually that primary capital, the flagship fund, is continually fed by being able to offer alternative sources of investment to its LPs.
Okay. And Olivier, maybe to close, is this now almost table stakes, hygiene factor? You need to have a very rigorous sort of operational model that LPs are going to scrutinize before they back you. And even if you have, amazing front office returns, amazing IRRs, if there are concerns about what's going underneath in the engine room, that now becomes a factor in LP choice on who they do and don't back.
Yeah, and something really important here is governance. You have two ways to see it. Either you see it as a constraint or you see it as an enabler, right? If it helps you grow, then it's not back office anymore. It becomes front office. And this is how can you execute your deal faster? How can you execute your deal more reliably? We were talking about LPs. They expect transparency. They expect data to be available. A few years ago, you were providing transparency to your LPs. It was a unique selling point. It was a differentiator. It's not anymore. That is, if you don't have it, you are filtered out of the list, right? So it's really, really key. But something to keep in mind is the best firms, they don't really talk about technology. It's only what the technology allows you to do, right? It's about, can the technology help you being more reliable, repeatable, resilient? This is what matters. So technology is not the ultimate goal. Technology is the enabler, and this is what we need to keep focus on.
Indeed.
If I could add as well, you made a great point earlier about the fact that we need to make life easy for our LPs, whether that be around transparency, whether that be around due diligence, for example. For me, it's fascinating that our industry has grown exponentially, as you pointed out at the start of the meeting, Nick. But I'm not convinced that the due diligence capabilities and the due diligence teams within our LPs have grown at the same rate. And therefore, we need to make life easy for them.
100%.
Yeah. A good point to close. Dominic, Olivier, thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you very much.
I think one thing that we've picked up from the conversation today is that AI can play a huge role in helping private equity firms to manage increasingly complex operations and to gain an edge in a competitive market. One thing that can't be replaced, however, is human insight and judgment. Thank you for watching, and keep an eye out for future episodes in the series.